there's quite a few things that we can take away from this charitra. I think what I take away is communication and how important that is for relationships. For a husband to listen to his wife and for a wife to listen to the husband, right? A marriage really strives on harmony. A marriage really strives on functionability. And if that's not there, it's hard for the marriage to keep going. A major factor in providing those things is communication. That can really help save a marriage. A lack of communication can sometimes break a marriage. It really takes two to tango, right? It takes two to play this game of love. It takes two to make a marriage work. One person cannot just be the person who's holding up the marriage. It has to be a two-person job. Both people in that marriage have a very equal responsibility. The husband is as responsible as the wife, and the wife is as responsible as the husband to keep that marriage flowing and flourishing to where it needs to go. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Welcome back to a new episode in the Charitropakhyan series. Today we're covering the 40th Charitra. And it starts off with Dohra, Ek jaat jangal basai tham kalahani nar, jo veh kahat so na kart, garan kart prahar. So it starts off with the summary of what the story is going to be about. The story is going to be about a farmer who lives in the jungles with a wife who is quite troublesome. And troublesome in the manner that whatever he would say for her to not do, she would do that. And whatever he would say to do, she would do the opposite, basically. She spends her days cursing him out. That's kind of the summary of the story, which we're given here in this dohra. And let's keep going and see what happens. So Sri Diljaan Mati ta ki triya. So the woman's name, her name was Sri Diljaan Mati. Achal Dev tehe naam reht priya. And the guy's name was Achal Dev. Rehet ran din taake dario. And this guy, Achal Dev, he was afraid of his wife night and day. Kabhu jaat na grihte mario. And he would never lay a finger on her. He was always scared of her, Dohra jahan bibasa ke paye milta satdrav jai. They lived in a spot where the two rivers, the Satluj river and the Beas river, would meet. Jehe thaan te do rahe chodar kabehe karehe banai. And their occupations were that they were both landlords. Okay, so they lived in this area where the Satluj and the Beas river meet, and they were both landlords. Chopei jo karj karno veh janat. Tahe kare nahi aas bakhanat. So whatever task that she was given by her husband, she responded by saying, I'm not going to do that. Tab woh kaaj tarun hat kariye. And the task that she's not meant to do, she gets stubborn and she does it, right? So basically she does exactly opposite of what she's told to do. Pat ki kaan na kach jeet tari. She doesn't pay any heed to her husband. She doesn't really listen to her husband. Pitran pach pahucha ai. Then one day, as their life is, going about in this normal way, one day such a holiday comes about, which is basically like the holiday of the ancestors, where people remember their ancestors in India. And so that holiday comes along. Pit ki thit tinhu sun pai. Triya so kahan sraad nahi ki jai. And so this year, the husband, thinking that if I tell her that we're gonna celebrate our ancestors, we're gonna celebrate, those that have passed before us, she's not gonna want to do it, right? So he says the opposite, because knowing that she'll do the opposite. So he tells her, this year, oh my wife, Diljaan Mati, this year we're not gonna celebrate our ancestors. And then she responds, like he thought, that okay, in this case, then we will celebrate this year. Sakal sraad ko saaj banayo. And she goes and starts to prepare for the celebration. Bhojan samay dijan ko ayo. And so it's customary in their traditions that when you're remembering your elders, your ancestors, You have the pandits or the Brahmins come to your house, and you feed them and whatnot. You give them money, donations, and so that's kind of what's gonna happen now. These pandits are gonna be coming to their house. And then the husband, again playing the same kind of child, the same kind of charitar he played before. Since it worked, he went up to his wife and he's like, hey, Diljaan Mati, can you do one more thing for me? Don't give these guys that are about to come to our house, these pandits, these Brahmins, don't give them any donations. Just do that one task for me, okay? I know I told you not to celebrate the ancestors. You're celebrating it, okay? But just don't give these guys any donations. And then she responds, like he probably assumed, and she responds by saying, okay, in that case, I will not delay in giving these guys money. Taka bira jotadeho. She grabs, all the money that she can, the coins that she can, and she gets ready to distribute these coins to these pandits once they come inside. Dijna det ab bilamna karaho. Tor mund par bista paraho. She thinks, or she says to him that I'm gonna do exactly this so that I can embarrass you, telling her husband, I'm gonna try to embarrass you, right? And so she thinks that she's doing the opposite of what the husband wants, and that therefore it'll be embarrassing for him. But she's not really thinking, right? She's not really thinking. She's just doing the opposite. And so, but this is what the husband wants, right? And so it's not really embarrassing him. It would have been embarrassing if the opposite had happened. The Brahman sab baith jevaye. Then eventually the Brahmins, the Pandits, they came inside their house, sat down. Adak darvak that tam pathaye. She fed them, gave them money. Eventually they ate their food and they bid the family farewell. Pontriya so tin as uchari. Then the husband, he says to his wife, Sunho shastra ki reet pyari. Oh my wife, listen to the tradition of the scriptures. Okay, so he's gonna tell her something about the tradition of the scriptures, the Indian scriptures, in the hopes that she will listen to this and pay heed to him. Now within the actual text, from this point on to maybe a few lines, a few stanzas more, the story takes kind of like a break to give you a future update of the story. Okay, so basically like the story's gotta take a little break here, and it's gotta start talking about what's gonna happen in the future of the story, right? The latter bits of the charitar itself, this charitar itself. And so you're free to see that text down below on the link, and you can follow along there, but I'm just gonna jump ahead and then come back to keep the story intact for our purposes here. Okay, so I'm going to jump ahead to line number, somewhere between line number 10 and 11. You'll see in the text below. Okay. He says that the scriptures tell us that you shouldn't go to your paternal home, right? So basically her peke da kar, right? We were saying Punjabi, your paternal home, without any reason. Like you shouldn't just be going there. So it could be that possibly that after this event took place, the celebration of ancestors took place, she probably wanted to go to her parents' house, or she often goes, right? Maybe. And so he wanted to give her some good Sikhya, good teachings, according to our traditions, right? According to our religion or whatever, we're not supposed to go to the paternal home. Like the wife is not supposed to go, right? Often, without any reason. Like this is kind of what the husband is telling her, right? And according to whatever they believe, right? And so she hears that and she says, "Kardori tum keh main deho." Oh, sorry. And so he continues on by saying that when the time is to take you to your paternal home, to your parents' home, I'll take you myself, and I'll make sure I take you in a carriage. I'll make sure I take you with man satkar. I'll take you with full respect. So just for now, so you know that you're not supposed to go when you're not called for, or there's no reason to go, basically. And to which she responded, unpakho yohi utjaho. To which she responded, I'm gonna go right now. In that case, right? I don't know what her husband was thinking. Like maybe he didn't learn his lesson, or maybe he wanted her to go, right? And that's actually kind of where he did want her to go, and that's actually where that portion we jumped ahead. I'm gonna go there now to show you what was going on in his mind. And that was kind of like, it wouldn't have made sense if we went through it straight. You would have to hear this portion first before you hear that portion. And that's kind of how the literature works itself, the Qissa literature. It's kind of, it's not really always like is linear based, right? So you kind of have to move around sometimes, and this is kind of one of those charitas you have to move around. And because I've edited the text already, I've translated text already, I know that's why I did it here for you guys in the video, but maybe a normal reader might not. And I think that's kind of where the fallacy of some translations for Charitropakhyan lies. They're not really some people are translating, especially the English version that already exists. There is an English version that already exists. You could probably find it on Google, and I feel like one of the faults there was that it's just translated as in a very linear basis, and the stories most of the times aren't linear in that sense. So the narration is kind of thrown off when you look at those translations. It doesn't really make sense sometimes. So yeah, anyways, I just thought I'd throw that in there. So I'm going back to line number 9 now. दोहरा पिंड नदी परवाहिया है या मह कछु ना विचार कहाँ ना कीना तिन तरुण दिए कठोरे है डार. So what's gonna happen now? As she's gonna go to her paternal house, she's gonna have to cross that river. Remember, they live, at the joint point of two rivers, right? So she's gonna have to cross the river, but because she never listened to anyone, the Dohra is saying, because she never listened to anyone, she never took any good advice from her family, from her husband, she's gonna put herself in danger, and as you'll see, it is quite danger indeed. Okay, in that moment the farmer got pretty upset. I think this is probably right after the Pandits leave. He's this Achal Dev husband, the farmer, he's upset. Maybe he's just upset about his life, how his life is going about with this partner of his, right? And I think rightfully so, right? You would probably be upset too if like you're scared every single day, from your spouse. You would be scared if you just say something and the other person just wiles out and does the total opposite thing, like just mental instability, right? And so that's kind of looks like what he's feeling as well. So he thought of a way to get rid of his wife. Okay. So he thinks in his mind that, what? The way I can get rid of her is by drowning her in water. And rid myself of this unfortunate event that my life is in, this unfortunate event to be married to this person, right? I'm gonna rid myself of this, and by drowning her in water. So he said to his wife, don't go to the home of your parents. And this is kind of where I had, jumped off, right? So we're gonna go back to that line now, and I'm just gonna go through that over. So he said, like, I'm gonna take you to your parents' house when the time comes. I'll take you myself in a carriage. And she responds by saying, no, I'm gonna go by myself. And so what happens next is this. So as she leaves, he starts following her behind. And then eventually they both reach that river, right? The union of the two rivers. Then Achal Dev, he said to her, Sun abala ta bachan hamaro, oh my woman, listen to my words. Sukhi chalo charnav pyari. You wanna go? Okay, go. But I'm not gonna stop you now. You wanna go? Like, here, go. But it'll be very easy if you cross over by a boat. and very well knowing that whatever he says, he's going to do the opposite, right? And he's trying to get rid of her at this point. So he says it'll be very easy if you cross over by a boat, and truthfully so, right? It would be very easy if she crosses by a boat. But saying that to her, she's going to do the exact opposite. So, मान ले हो यह मेर उचारी मोर उचारी, please listen to me, he says. त्रिय कहे हो बोल बैल पूछ कहे जय हो. And Diljaan Mati responds by saying, nope, I'm not going to use the boat. I'm going to cross over. And I'm going to cross over, and she looks around and she finds a bull, right? There's a bull, just a random bull standing there. Poor guy, had nothing to do with this whole thing. And she looks at the bull and she's like, you know what? I'm going to cross over with that bull over there. And I'm going to cross over with his tail. So I'm going to grab the bull's tail, and the bull's going to go into the stream, right? Into the river. And I'm going to cross over that way. All right, cool. Let's see how this ends up. Ab hi paar nadi ke hoe ho. And I'll cross over the river right now. I'm not going to wait. Yeah. And now this next stanza here, it's a savaiya, and it just kind of, it takes a break from the narration of the story to kind of give us a little bit more of a insight to this guy's life, Achal Dev's life, and kind of what he had to go through, prior to this whole story that we've heard, a little bit more background. So that's what the Sway is going to go into. Savaiya पोर होते गर जय लर जय बर जय सब लोग रह नह ठानी. So it starts off by saying that every single day, as soon as the sun would rise, she would begin to yell and fight, with everyone in her family, including her husband and others as well. And everyone would try to, calm her down. Everyone would try to talk her, give her some sense, right? But to no avail, right? सास के त्रास ना आवत स्वास द्वारण ते फिर जात जिठानी. Her mother-in-law tried, her sister-in-law tried, right? So it looks like Achal Dev had his mother living with him. He had his sister. Both of these guys, they both tried to calm her down, right? And to, but it didn't work, right? And eventually even her mother-in-law got scared of her. Okay. Her sister-in-law as well. Whenever she would see Diljaan Mati, she would just turn the other way. She was like, I don't want any part of this, right? So imagine that. Usually it's the other way around, right? Like, when a girl gets married to a guy's house and there's a mother living there, the guy's mother's living there, right? It's always like this kind of it's not always the most if your life is like that, bless, very good for you. That's amazing, Maj Kirpa. But a lot of times it's not like that, right? Like there's two big worlds colliding there, right? A mom and and the daughter-in-law, right? And so it's always there's always this battle, right? A little bit here and there. Hopefully fun, right? But yeah, in this case, the mother-in-law is the one who's scared of her. Yeah. And let's look at the next line. Paas parosan baas keheo ban log pehe sab hi nakhwani. And even the neighbors, right? They got so troubled by her constant yelling and her attitude. They also left the area, that they were living in. They left their homes, because of her. Pani ke magat pathar marat nar ke do kar nahar ani. And the narrators, and they're saying, remember the advisors, they're saying, what kind of woman is this, right? She, rather than a woman, she behaves like a lioness, right? She's acting like a lioness, and not lioness in a good way, right? Where the sherini hai, we don't, not like that kind of singing type of lion, right? This is the context here is quite the opposite, right? Lioness in the sense of just being vicious, right? It's just being brutal, and vicious towards her family, and that in that sense she's this lioness. Dohra bail pooch gahe kya jab gayi nadi ke tar. Okay, we're back in the story now. So what does she do? She grabs the bull, right? She grabs the tail of the bull and she pushes the bull into the water. Drid kar ya kahe pakriyo Pakriya bol so kook gawar. And she pushes the bull into the water. She goes into the water herself. The stream is so strong. It's going at her. And Achal Dev, he's yelling at her, and this, he's like, oh my god, you idiot, don't let go of the bull, right? And here at this point, maybe he's back, he's not playing that Charitra anymore. Maybe he's actually being genuine here, that like in that adrenaline, in that emotion, he's looking at her, his wife about to be swept away, and maybe he at that moment, just that adrenaline kicks in, and he's saying this out of being genuine, right? Don't let go of the bull. And obviously, when she hears that, what she's gonna do, chor pooch kar tai suni kook jab kaan. And the moment she heard that sentence, she let go of the bull right away. Gari pakhat beh gayi jampur ki sapyan. And as she's being swept away now, right, by the river, downstream, she's hitting rocks, she's boom, going everywhere. And in that moment, even then, she's still cursing out her husband, as she's on her way to death. Nar kalhani bor kar jaat eo greh maahe. After getting rid of his wife, the farmer Achal Dev, he returns home. Kahan sukhi te jan basa asan bayan jahe. How can a man, the narrators or the advisors are saying, how can a man married to such a woman ever be at peace? And that's where the Charitra ends here. And there's quite a few things that we can take away from this Charitra, and one thing that I think back to is the way, the Charitra depicted communication, right? Like, for example, it wasn't just the husband, the mother-in-law was involved, the sister-in-law was involved, heck, the neighbors were involved, right? Where they were trying to communicate to her, right, a certain thing about her personality, right, or the way she's acting, right, her attitude, right, and she would not take that, she would not listen to that, right. So I think the Charitra here, from that point there, I think what I take away is communication and how important that is for relationships. For a husband to listen to his wife, and for a wife to listen to the husband, right? Two partners, essentially, right? If communication isn't there, right, that can lead to many problems, right? First of all, it can lead to disharmony, right? And it can lead to a chaotic atmosphere. It can lead to dysfunctionability, right, between the marriage, between a relationship, and that's something that no one wants, right? A marriage really strives on harmony. A marriage really strives on functionability, and if that's not there, it's hard for the marriage to keep going, and a major factor in providing those things is communication. And communication is the art, of listening and speaking. The art of speaking, meaning that you are able to gather your emotions, you're able to gather your feelings, right? Able to analyze what you're feeling first and not just start speaking. You're able to analyze what you're feeling first, understand what you're feeling, and articulate that into words, and then pass it on to someone else. That's the art of speaking. There's no sense in just speaking away, and hoping that the other person will understand what you're saying without you understanding yourself. That's a paradox, right? Like how can someone else understand what you're trying to say if you don't understand it yourself? So the art of speaking, it entails all of that. Entails us to have that ability, that emotional intelligence to gather what we're feeling first, understand what we're feeling second, then articulate that into words that the other person can understand, and then throw them out. Then what is the art of listening? Art of listening is now taking all that whole package that you've just been given, right? Putting your own emotions aside and objectively taking that on. Why objectively? Because if you don't put your emotions to the side, you make it personal, you're not going to be able to listen to what they're saying. Instead, you're just going to hear one word, that pertained to what you did wrong. Instead of looking at that objectively, you're looking at it from a personal level. You're gonna block out every single thing else, right? And within that talk that the person was giving, if it's the art of talk, like I mentioned, right? Maybe in there is some solutions. Maybe in there for sure there's some problems that was experienced, but within there might be having also solutions to what could be done to fix the issues that that are being experienced. But you, as a listener, if you were not listening with the art of listening, you were just listening, then what will happen? You will ignore all of that necessary, communication and not be able to understand your partner. So there is the art of speaking and there's the art of listening, and both require work, both require effort. And this is effort that we put into the relationship on an individual level and as a collective level, on a collective level as well. Individual level, how? Well, you work on your thoughts, you work on your emotions. If you're the one that's going to be speaking, you work on how to present your words, right? And then as a listener, you work on listening. You work on listening without your personal feelings involved, right? And again, these can happen simultaneously. You do that maybe somewhere else, you do that at work, you do that at school, and then you practice it, right, with other people, because sometimes it's much easier to practice it with other people that you're not personally involved with as deep as a marriage, right? And then you bring what you learn to your relationship, and then you implement it there, right? And that can really help save a marriage. And a lack of communication really can sometimes break a marriage, as unfortunate as that is, and I think this charitra really pinpoints how it really takes two to tango, right? It takes two to play this game of love. It takes two to play this to make a marriage work. One person cannot just be the person who's holding up the marriage. It has to be a two-person job, and both people in that marriage, right, have a very equal responsibility. Whether the roles might be different, right? Whether the type of work these two do in that marriage is different, but the responsibility is the same, right? The husband is as responsible as the wife, and the wife is as responsible as the husband to keep that marriage flowing and flourishing to where it needs to go. So that was just one, understanding that I was able to take away from this charitra, and I'm sure there's many more, and I would love to hear from you guys in the comments below. Like always, please do like and share these videos if you find them useful to you, and in that way it might be useful to others as well. So thank you so much, Sangat-ji, and I'll see you in the next episode. Until then, Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.